Ladies and gentlemen, if I get everybody to take their seats. I have a recommendation. If you have a cell phone, now would be a wonderful time to put it on silent. Because when it gets quiet and you're the one whose pocket's ringing, man, that's awkward and embarrassing. Thank you guys for coming out to what is technically the 5th Nitro revival, but not annual because we skipped 2. But thanks to Steve and Cindy Gibbs for giving us a place to smell good stuff, to hear good stuff, and I think most importantly, just to be with great people. I look out in this crowd and it's just mind-blowing. Before we get started on our tribute, our celebration of life, and our memorial to 2 absolute icons of the sport, I want to turn the mic over for a few minutes to another icon of the sport and an icon of humanity. Ladies and gentlemen, Steve Gibbs.
Well, thank you guys very much on behalf of Cindy and the Gibbs family and everybody behind this thing. I think we're just happy to do this, and we'll keep doing it as long as we can. We're here obviously tonight to celebrate the lives of Dave McClellan and Bill Schultz. So this will be brief. I'm going to deal with some business that should have been handled some time ago. There's a fellow that's worked his heart out for a lot of years doing this stuff, drag racing in all sorts of capacities, that should have had something presented to him a long time ago, but it wasn't. So I'd like to invite Gene Gasolin. If Gene Gasolin would come up.
Guys, look around you, and the first one to find Gino, we're going to have a special t-shirt for.
So here's a guy who has given his entire life to the sport. Gone through a heart transplant. Still here. And we're honored to have Gino here. But something that should have been put in his hands at Bakersfield a few years ago, we're going to put it in his hands tonight.
Thank you, everyone. You're a great family, and you've kept me alive. Thank you.
Thank you, Gino, for all those years. With that, we're going to turn it back and honor the lives of 2 wonderful folks that fortunate to know both of them for over 50 years. But thank you, everybody, for being here. We appreciate it. Thank you.
I wish we could do roll call. No, I mean, I look around the room, and the first time I went to a drag race, I was 7 years old. Raise your hand, John. My Uncle John started me on this journey, and he's still one of the smartest trivia guys I've ever heard. And the stories he tells, and to listen to him talking to the icons with Vance Hunt in line there, and the things they were going over, and the details, it just blows me away. And when the McClellan family asked me to do this, immediate yes. And then Bill Schultz's family, Jessie, had called me and she said, would you want to do this? Yes. I'm just so humbled by this and to be in this room here. Drag racing is just, it's a magical sport. And not just for what takes place on the drag strip. In the pits, it's stunning. What the cars do, what the people do. You know, when I went to my first race, Bill Schultz was 8 feet tall. I mean, these people they're just untouchable. And we're going to do our best to do some justice to 2 just absolutely amazing men with completely different approaches to drag racing. Bill Schultz and Big Mac. And the fact that this level of people showed up to show their appreciation, support, and celebrate those 2 lives is beyond amazing. And you look what Bill Schultz did. Pretty sure Bill never had a $3 million a year sponsor. In fact, I'm guessing a few years he was rubbing nickels together to go out there, but there's just some people that are magical with their sense of whatever you're good at. Some people are good at talking. We'll get to that guy in a second. Some people are good at holding the steering wheel, and some people are just wizards holding wrenches. And Schultz was one of those guys. What he did out there over decades, you know, you see some people come out for 4, 5, 8 years, and they're great, and then you never hear from them again. Not Schultz. He did it in the 60s. Hell, he did it in the 50s. He did it in the 70s for certain. Still there in the 80s, 90s, and 2000s winning races. And to have somebody that rides that wave from a period of a pioneer's perspective to when technology and corporate sponsorships came up, and he never got swallowed up in it. Put a competitive car out there every single time that he took it to the starting line. And that's something that should be lauded. I'd like to back up for a second. There's a gentleman that wanted to be here tonight, and he's going to be here tomorrow. And he sent his best wishes to all of you and regards to the families, to the Schultz family, to the McClellan family. Gentleman's name is Ed Iskandarian. Turned 101 years old in July 10th? July 10th, 101. Still buying green bananas. Renews his car insurance for a year at a time. That's policy. We're not all going to get to live to be 101. Moravas might get pretty damn close. Perdome said he's going to outlast you, though. But it's the time. It's what you pack into that time, right? Because when you're done, what do you leave? You leave family, and you leave memories. And these two are going to leave some amazing memories. What Bill Schultz did out there was fantastic. But then when you get to know the man, like I had no concept. Again, I thought he was 8 feet tall. And the first time I got to talk to him, and he was just this fantastic smartass. What an awesome, sarcastic sense of humor. And I thought, how does that mix? I always pictured these people that were the top of their profession as just being Poindexters. I'm good at this, but I can't socialize, I can't talk. To have a guy that well-rounded was just absolutely fantastic. Anyway, there's a couple folks that would like to come up and give their dues to Schultz. And the first one is another drag race Hall of Famer. The winner of the 1963 Winter Nationals. So not only is the driver of the car that won Top Gas at the 1963 Winter Nationals, your boss sitting right over there who owned that car. But without further ado, my favorite Maytag repairman, Bob Morales. You may know him by a different name.
You're setting.
I'm on the clock. By the way, you guys, we got so much hot air in this room, you can take your jackets off because it's getting really hot in here. We're talking about Bill Schultz. I was inducted into the Hall of Fame 2015 with Bill. I only knew him as a tuner, and I raced against a couple of his Top Gas dragster drivers. One by the name of Jack Jones, and the other guy by the name of, who was it? Oh, Jerry Clan. But I'm going to talk about after getting inducted into the Hall of Fame, I got really close to Bill. I never knew him as a tuner because drivers never met tuners unless they drove for him or got kicked out of the seat. But me and Bill got to be close. Bill's friend Judy, who my wife fell in love with, we started going to happy hours a lot. And then a number of years later, I got involved in a Bonneville car. And so I asked Bill to come along and help tune this Chrysler car. Now remember, I'm a driver, and all of a sudden now I'm a tuner of a race car. I didn't do well. But thanks to Bill Schultz, we did really well, type of thing. But we got to know the guy. Anybody could have 5 different drivers win 37 national championships, Wally, is somebody special. And like Waterbed Fred said to me a few minutes ago, he had quite a sense of humor. Quite a sense of humor in that stuff. But anyways, the next guy.
Are you kidding me?
Oh, I got more time? Oh, no.
Hold on.
No, wait.
No, you're going to get plenty more time. So Bob told me, give me 5 minutes, I'm going to go 4 minutes and 68 seconds. Then he did the math and figured it out. I really wanted to prove him wrong, and the son of a bitch is right again. Go ahead.
One other thing I want to share with you. When I was young, after me and Bill got inducted in the Hall of Fame, Bill come up after me, and he was standing up giving his thanks to everybody, and then he said to Gauntless, Don Gauntless, of course, was putting an event on, and he goes, Don, he says, you had a dog named Schultz. Did you name that dog after me? And then Garlis got up and says, "You're damn right. I had to think about my dog when I had to come and race you."
For the record, 2 minutes and 20 seconds. Why is Sharon laughing so hard right now, Bob? Where's Jerry? Where's Jerry? Where'd you go, Jerry? Why don't you mosey on up here? So in 1971, NHRA had kind of already hit the big time. 70 was the super season. They went from 4 national events up to 7. Keep in mind, there was a lot of regional events at that point. You didn't just earn points at nationals. But to go to the World Finals, you had to qualify for the World Finals by winning your division or being an all-star standout. So actually, just to make it to that race, much less attempt to qualify, was a feat in and of itself. And in 1971, there was a racer from Florida, last name was Garlitz, I believe, had a really good year, had debuted his car and just kind of taken the drag racing world by storm, and they figured it was a foregone conclusion he was going to be your world champion. It's not the way it worked out. It was winning one race made you the world champion. And man, if you were going to win one race, Jerry, and I had a time machine, that is the one race I would love to have won. A front-engine dragster staged next to a rear-engine dragster, all the marbles on the line. Maravis, you're not liable. I mean, you're not eligible to answer this. John, you can't either. Does anybody remember what happened in that final? Garlitz red-lit, and to this day swears it was a 5/10 tree, not a 4/10. Jerry still has the trophy and he ain't giving it back. Your 1971, and guys, he did so much more than this in a race car, but your 1971 Top Fuel World Champ, driving a car that simply said, Schultz and Glenn. Jerry the Hunter Glenn.
I've got a long story. The bottom line, I knew of Bill. Needless to say, it was one of the top, if not the top, gas dragsters at the time. But anyway, I was between rides. I get a call at work, and it's Bill. Introduces himself and asked me if I would drive his car the following weekend in Orange County. This was a gas car. And so I was between rides, so naturally I said yes. I met him at the track. We ran, we did very well, we won the race. So that was the bottom line. Then I was in between rides, but my other Top Fuel ride started up, so we were apart for, I don't know, it was probably 2.5 years. And when I left the Atlas car, because John was going to funny cars, I bought a roller Woody with no motor. Well, apparently Bill heard about it or whatever. He came into the shop and basically said he was interested in putting a motor in it and going fuel racing. Needless to say, what was I going to say but oh yes. And another kick to it was he said I had to drive the gas car too. Needless to say, that was even better yet, 2 cars. Bottom line, we started running. It didn't take long before we had the thing, we were winning races. So it got to the point where Goodyear tires were getting so good that we had to carry a lot of lead on the front end. So anyway, Bill decides he's going to design a car. So he designs it, he calls up Tuttle to build it. We bring it out, right out of the trailer. It was one of the quickest cars out there. And the bottom line is that he moved the motor out 46 inches and the wheelbase 222 inches, which is way different than any other car out there. And the thing was a rocket ship. We ended up winning, well, we won a lot more races than we lost. And then won the world championship. Then we built a rear engine car, but the sign was on the wall that you need to go to a late model, and we had 392s. Needed to go to the late model. and most of them crawler glide, so we couldn't afford to do it. So the bottom line is I went on to drive a funny car, and Bill went on to help others and open his machine shop. And then, needless to say, he started crew chiefing different cars. Every car that he touched ran quicker and better. Then he ends up, having excellent performance with Dale Pulley, Mark Oswald, Kelly Brown, Gary Reed. So I wasn't in drag racing then, but I was following his career. Needless to say, always impressed. And then we talked a couple times on the phone during probably about 35 years, not seeing each other in person or whatever. And fortunately, Troy Glenn and Mark Smith put our old car back together to show and to cackle. So we were out cackling it at the Riverside, Pomona, the Roadster show, and Bill and Joel had come out there just to see cars, check the place out or whatever. Didn't know we were there. So anyway, we got together. He got enthused, so he started coming out with the Crackle car. And needless to say, we were better friends than ever and always hanging out with each other. And the bottom line, when all this crap came down with his sickness and stuff, I think he was really happy that he ended up being with his daughter and son-in-law and their children till the end. And I miss him. Thank you.
I actually want to ask Jerry a question. I don't know if you heard what he said. Sometimes things get lost in the details that you drove a gas car that won a lot of races. Where are the Cannons, Brent and Stacy? Where are you guys? They put on a dinner the Thursday before the Pomona races, the AA gas dragster dinner. Did I say it right, Brent? Not allowed to call it Top Gas because it wasn't called out till later. And what you get is a room full of people like this, and the Schultzes and the Bowers, and it's fun. It's fun to be around those people when they're just themselves. There's no sponsors, there's no obligations, there's no requirements to do anything except have fun and tell some cool stories. And I'm grateful to Cannons for doing that because it's enabled me to kind of be a fly on the wall in some of these events here. But what Jerry said is Bill fielded a dominant gas dragster and then put Nitro in it and never embarrassed himself. He figured it out like this and went out and dominated races in that category too. And it is so difficult for people to be good in multiple facets of the sport. But the question I got for you, Jerry, is I have driven for a lot of crew chiefs. Apparently I'm not nearly as likable as I thought I once was. But what they tend to have in common is they never make mistakes. But man, you drivers screw shit up all the time. So my question to you, though, is I kind of would like you to drill down a little bit on your relationship with Bill while you drove for him. Not the relationship 35 years later when you were fighting over the check to see who would pay for dinner. As a crew chief, before you realized this guy and I are going to be lifetime buddies, what was it like sitting in the seat with that guy tuning?
I had no problem. He seemed to be satisfied with me, and I was more than satisfied with him because I get to set in the rocket ship. He did all the work. I just got to have the pleasure of going down the track.
Thank you so much. Jerry Glenn, ladies and gentlemen. Could I get the Schultz family to stand up, please? I'm not going to make you speak. Guys, if you would do me a favor, just kind of look around at the room here. And I don't know how much you follow the sport. I don't know. Drag racing is not the largest pond on the planet. If you're not into it, you may not know some of the names. But I guarantee you, if we listed everybody that was in this room, and you went back and cut out newspaper clippings of what they've done in their careers, This is the cream of the crop here. And to have him show up to pay tribute to your father, your grandfather, he's a really special guy. Bill Schultz, rest in peace. And there is that car. David, how did we do on time there? Guys, we're just... well, let's just count down then. See, if Moravas would have taken the full 5 minutes, this would have been perfect. Jesus H. Greg Sharp's going to show you how to take your full allotted time when he comes up here, okay? Jessica, I apologize on the timing there, guys. You can enjoy the rest of it, but special human being.
You still get a
That's because I didn't charge it. But Kevin's paying double, so. Man, it's a great trip down memory lane.
Thanks for the pictures. It's awesome. The memories just coming back from all the years.
Where's Snake? Where's Don? Don, you want to stand up? Poldy, stand up. Don't worry, it's not going to be an arm wrestling deal. Stand up, Poldy. Don, where are you? Man, it's good to be the third best funny car driver in the room, isn't it? I still get a bronze medal.
That'll be in the lower end.
Difference is you guys had to work on your shit.
We won that race too.
Oh, that person.
I'm just going to enjoy the slideshow with you guys.
Jack, we never saw you so quiet again. 2 more minutes.
Oh, damn, I still had on stopwatch. 2 more minutes?
With you, we would have filmed it.
He said.
Go, Schultz!
Oh, I know. Yeah.
Did that accidentally get thrown in the pile of slides? I think your dad would have appreciated that one.
I understand.
It's just great that it brings back the memories, just going through it. And you know, sometimes the best way to MC this is just get out of the way and let the pictures do the talk. And it's just awesome walking back through time here. Dan Gibbs was handsome back then too, wasn't he?
Yes! Still is. Green.
hairy chest and all.
Palmer.
Yeah, I know.
Bill Schultz. Part 2.
Clock starts now.
Obviously, it wasn't to have 2 here, but it made perfect sense with the Schultz family coming out here and already having planned to do this for Big Mac to give everybody the chance to honor those lives and celebrate together with each other here and talk about those great memories.
Hello everybody, hello everybody, hello everybody, hello everybody, I'm Dave McClellan, I'm Dave McClellan, I'm Dave McClellan.
I don't care where you were, if you heard that, you knew something special was about to happen. When you walked into a drag strip and it was on every PA speaker, not God, but man, he was omnipresent. Dave and I'm going to say maybe early 90s, started to become friends. And I was talking to Louise earlier and I said, you know, I still get chills thinking about this. It was a car show to promote one of the Pomona National events. Had my car out there. Dave was walking up and down and my buddies and I had bracket cars and we just started talking to him. And that first conversation, as I'm talking to him, it's that voice. It's that voice that comes out of every single speaker over a quarter mile and back in the pits. And he's 2 feet from my face. And it just was completely surreal. Well, years go by, 15 years go by. We're really good friends at this point. I've been over at their house and still though, when he talked to me, it was that voice. It didn't matter what we were talking about. Dave McClellan was always larger than life. And it wasn't just the voice. It was the heart, it was the personality, it was the character. It literally was everything about the man. And I got a free t-shirt.
Hey everybody, Brian Lones here, appropriately I guess coming from a hotel room at the SEMA show. As we all know, Mac was a huge part of that, but I just wanted to start by thanking the McClellan family for reaching out and allowing me to be a part of tonight's celebration of life. And you know, I certainly did not have the relationship that many of you in this room or in this area have had with Mac that lasted decades upon decades. My relationship with him was certainly more short-lived, but it was as meaningful, I believe, as any that exists in this room. He has been an incredible influence on me in so many ways. He is a guy that set a literal professional bar for a job that has no real measurable metric. Drag racers get a time slip. It tells you how quick you went, how fast you went, how good a job you did on the starting line. The announcer doesn't get a time slip. The announcer doesn't get a rating. The announcer doesn't get a scorecard. The only real measurable metric of an announcer of any sort is whether you like listening to the person or you not necessarily even find their voice pleasurable, whether you find their presence pleasurable. There's not a single time I can remember that I watched a drag race, I watched Mac host an event, I watched Mac interact with people, I watched Mac shake hands or smile, that the people around him were not happy. Happy to see him, happy to be near him, happy to be in his presence. I can tell you for point of fact that has and was always my great pleasure to be around Mac. It made me happier. It made me understand the reverence he had for drag racing, the reverence he had for his friendships, the reverence he had for his family. And all in all, what it did to influence me was to try to do in whatever way I could, maintain that legacy. Not by copying anything he said or pretending to be him, but by understanding the weight and the importance he put on certain things, the emphasis he put on the right things, and the class in which he did that stuff with. So the way I remember Mac is being the classiest, funniest, most awesome guy I've ever met, one of my largest professional influences, and a guy whose footsteps, my tiny little shoes, have nowhere near the size to fill, but are honored to stand in. Thank you all for being here tonight. Again, thank you to the McClellan family for allowing me to have this time.
David, I could see you didn't get the notes that we thoroughly
Dave
discussed.
McClellan was born October 30th, 1936 in Kansas City, Missouri. His parents, Ray and Margaret McClellan, had deep roots in the Midwest. He grew up in Liberty, about 20 miles northwest of Kansas City. Big Mac did all the things you'd do as a kid, scouts, football, but as with lots of us, was drawn toward cars and trying to go faster. My grandfather worked around the edges of the car business. He owned a gas station, later worked for Vacuum Oil Company. Today we call it Mobil. He played football at Liberty High School, and at one time even had aspirations of being a football coach. At college, he was drawn to the budding broadcast industry, first at Southwest Missouri State and then at Iowa State University. He basically took only the broadcasting classes until they kicked him out because they couldn't teach him anything else. He worked at various radio and TV stations in Kansas City and Little Rock before finally hitting the big time in Shreveport, Louisiana. He worked at radio and TV stations in Shreveport and was the disc jockey Raven Dave when my mom's cousin entered an on-air contest and won and needed a ride down to the station. My mom gave her the ride, and the rest, as they say, is history. In the 1960s, he was the news director and evening news anchor for the NBC station in Shreveport, and in fact won an Associated Press Award for his coverage of when Lee Harvey Oswald was shot by Jack Ruby. I'm sure we've all heard the story of how his announcing career started at Carlisle, Arkansas. Well, let's let Big Mac explain it himself.
The announcer that was hired in by the track operator was trying his best to announce this match race between Don Garlitz and Eddie Hill. But I don't know whether he was starstruck by the legends that were in front of him or what, but he just locked up. He froze. I mean, if it was an engine in a car, you'd say the oil pump just broke. But he could not say anything. And I was standing next to the track operator, the manager, and I said, hey, how about I give it a try? He says, you couldn't do any worse. He knew I was in radio and TV, so I said, okay, well, with that vote of confidence, what did I have to lose?
Lots of weekends traveling through Division 4, announcing any place he could, sometimes for no money. He got a pilot's license so he could minimize travel time. Then our great friend Dale Ham carried the water for him, so to speak, and got him his first national event job at the 1961 U.S. Nationals. In 1969, the new track in Houma, Southland Dragway, needed a manager, so my dad made the leap from radio TV guy to full-time drag race guy. A stop in Dallas in 1971 preceded our final move to California and working in the publicity department at NHRA. During the near decade at NHRA, he held a variety of positions and promotions and helped put together the first syndicated TV package with Diamond P. In 1978, a new opportunity came calling and he moved to the advertising staff at Popular Hot Rodding magazine while still announcing and hosting the Diamond P broadcasts. While at PHR, he came up with the idea for an all-Chevrolet event, and Super Chevy Sunday debuted in Orange County in 1981. After a few years doing that, he had the confidence to strike out on his own and form his own company, specializing in on-air and on-site hosting and announcing, and doing all those automated phone systems where we could never call any performance company without hearing that voice. He retired from TV in 2000, from announcing in 2003, but still kept busy with car shows, special events, and as the voice of SEMA until his final retirement in 2016.
The apple doesn't fall very far from the tree. That was son Mike McClellan that did that, and that's a great tribute. I feel compelled to... Just as a point of clarification, I did not know Lee Harvey Oswald had passed away, so I send my sympathies. And he's not related to Mark, that's correct, right? Okay, just want to make sure. Maybe you guys are wondering what the shirts are. They say Tuna Tank on them. That's in reference to Dave's race car, the Fiat Topolino that's actually over in Kevin's pit right now. Looks a lot like this car over here, guys. I did not realize you had two of them here. Again, Mike, some notes would have been much appreciated. So Schultz was a racer that could talk. Big Mac was a talker who could race. Met him in the semifinals of the National Open at Palmdale in 1996, and I got to tell you, I never got to race Boldy, I never got to race Prudhomme, I got to race Big Mac. Pretty cool. Hey, our first speaker here, man, you want to talk about another Hall of Famer? This guy's not only a Founders Award winner, he was inducted as a regular inductee into the International Drag Race Hall of Fame. And I would say that along with Steve Gibbs is probably the man most responsible for the whole nostalgia movement. Greg, if you would go ahead and head on up here, the former curator of the NHRA Wally Parks Motorsports Museum, and a man, and Greg, if you want to stand down there, that's fine, you can come up. A man that is literally a virtual encyclopedia, and not just of drag racing, of the entire hot rod movement. Because if you want to know where we came from, you look to the streets, you look to the dry lakes, and you look at that convergence. And here's a guy that knows it, A to Z, top to bottom, Greg Sharp.
You put the pressure on me, didn't you? I'm sure everyone here is familiar with his drag racing and television career, but I'd like to tell you about some of the other facets of Dave McClellan. Of course, I was aware of Dave long before I met him, but we actually met in the late 70s when he joined the famed LA Roadster Club. He bought an orange 29 Roadster pickup from his dear friend Diamond Jim Annam. I'd been a member for some time and had a black 29 Roadster pickup. Part of the Roadster's membership requirements is an annual inspection to ensure the members' cars remain up to club standards. During the inspection, someone on the committee decided the tailgate on Dave's pickup was a little wavy and warned him that in a certain length of time it would have to be fixed. Well, that's ludicrous because he passed the inspection to get in the club and he hadn't changed anything. But the plot thickens. The club made an overnight outing to San Diego and SeaWorld. We all went to dinner together, and in the course of the evening, Dave and I may have been overserved, which isn't much for me because I don't drink. Sometime in the evening, we talked about Dave's inspection and how we could fix it. Sometime after that night, after everyone had turned in, we went out to the hotel parking lot and traded my perfectly straight black tailgate with Dave's orange one. The next morning, we made sure to be standing by our cars when a member or two of the inspection committee happened by, and Dave and I simultaneously pointed to my black tailgate on his orange car and loudly asked, "Is that straight enough for you?" Somehow they didn't see the humor in it. And somewhere there are photos of very young Melissa posed between these two mismatched cars. On another Sunday afternoon Roadster Club outing in the foothills, Dave insisted we stop by his home. As we sat around the living room, Dave excused himself to make a quick phone call. This was during the time he would occasionally sub for Jim Healy, who was the regular sports reporter on KLAC radio. Dave picks up the phone again and shushes everyone. He then proceeds to give the Spring Nationals race report, going through all the pro classes, only to end with, "From Columbus, this is Dave McClellan reporting for KLAC." When he hung up, I turned to him and I said, "You lying sack." He turned to me and he said, "That's showbiz, son." Also a member of the Roadsters at that time was Tom McClellan, best known as the publisher of Hot Bike and Street Rodder magazine. Now Tom was rather flamboyant, to say the least. He had two pet cougars living inside his house. We had a lot of fun in those years, and we're certainly going to miss him. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Craig. Still can't get over that Lee Harvey's gone. That is tough. I think Big Mac's been an influence on a lot of careers for a lot of different reasons, and not just announcers' careers. You heard Brian Loans, who is the color man for, well, he's the lead announcer for the NHRA series right now. And when somebody of that caliber, Brian is incredibly knowledgeable, he's a great announcer, and you recognize that Big Mac's the one that paved the way for so many of us in so many different ways. It was this event last year, Kevin called me up. Kevin, you want to stand up? I have probably never been beaten by an opponent more than this man right here in bracket cars. And for that, I will forever be in your debt, Kevin. Thank you. And he said, hey, Pops is coming out, and this might be the last time you see him. And got to go sit in the golf cart with Dave, and we just talked. And it's tough when you see someone in their twilight. And I think with Dave, it was extra tough because he was booming. He was powerful. He wasn't supposed to be mortal. And to watch him and say, ooh, there's a time frame for all of us. That was tough, but I will forever be in your guys' debt for letting me spend that extra time with your pops. And Louise, when I was going through cancer, she made me a blanket. And you guys have always been incredibly special people, and it's always neat. Joe DiMaggio would still have been an awesome baseball player if he was an asshole. But when people that do amazing things turn out to be amazing human beings, it just makes everything a little bit more special. I think that of Bill Schultz, and I think that of Big Mac. Is KJ around? You're not KJ, you're Mike. For God's sake. KJ, could you start heading up this way? I was talking about influences on careers. KJ Jones is an automotive journalist, and I'm thinking to myself, if that's the business I wanted to get into, and I wanted a tutor, top of my list would be Dave McClellan. Ladies and gentlemen, KJ Jones.
Thank you very much. Thank you to the McClellan family for reaching out to me to talk about Dave. One of the questions that I've heard for a long time when I would see Dave with my wife Crystal, Dave was a hugger. Dave was someone who would embrace you. If he knew you, he was really, really genuine about wanting to know how you're doing, wanting to know everything you could tell him in a short period of time, especially at an event. But I've known Dave for a long time. People wonder, how do you know Dave McClellan? How do you know him? Think of Internet 1.0. Long before cell phones, online services, the Prodigy service, or message boards for various interest groups, drag racing was a matter of communicating people from all over the country, let alone the world. But Dave and I were on Prodigy along with a lot of who's who in the NHRA, Denny Darnell, Sally and Jack McGrath. Just a lot of people participated on Prodigy in this drag racing forum, and I live in New York. I'm a New Yorker. We would talk back and forth, and when NHRA would come to Englishtown or Maple Grove, I'd go to races and figure out, hey, you know what, let's put faces to names and meet each other. And that's where I met Mac. I met Mac way back in the day at Englishtown, and we forged a friendship basically online and would see each other occasionally at races when I can get to Maple Grove or get to Englishtown. And I'm a drag racer. I'm a drag racer myself, drag race fan, and now I am in media. And to get to that, Dave was super influential for me to be where I am right now in my career. In 1994, I met my wife Crystal, and I wanted to do racing. I wanted to get into the racing business or the motorsports business in some capacity. And the blizzard of '96 back east was my catalyst to say, you know what? I gotta go to California. This is it. It's time to go to California. So in 1997, I loaded up my car, first my car on the trailer, then I loaded my van, proceeded to go racing at every open racetrack across the country, and got to California in July of 1997. I contacted Mac. And again, no cell phones. We're calling each other on the phone. I was writing letters to him, literally writing letters from back east, but calling him on the phone saying, Mac, you know what? I'm here now. And I want to do this. I want to get into racing. I want to get into something that deals with, you know, what you do if I can. KJ, no problem. I'm trying to imitate him the best I can. But KJ, don't worry about it, KJ. You'll be fine. You will be fine. You have ambition. You just instantly a mentor. I got a job at the dealership. It was my first job. I reached out to Dave, and I have this letter. We found this. Me and Crystal had a massive cleanup in our office because our office had become a train wreck.
Well, that's a Southern's.
But I found this letter when we were cleaning up the office, and it stopped me. I gotta hold it out here. I do have to hold it out here. But it's Dave McClellan Enterprises, and his email address, etc. To whom it may concern, I'm taking this opportunity to offer my support of KJ Jones. It has been a pleasure. I've had the pleasure of knowing KJ for several years through his passion, drag racing. This relationship has drawn much closer since KJ and Crystal made the move to California, which is true nirvana for a car nut. KJ has the experience and knowledge that is invaluable in today's modern automotive world as he combines the experience of the media world with the excitement of racing and street machines. I firmly believe that KJ Jones would be an asset to any business, particularly one that utilizes his media skills in the high-performance automotive universe. Should you desire any further information, please feel free to contact me at any time. Sincerely, Dave McClellan. So that was written on April 15th, 1998. It was just a great endorsement. I didn't get into the business until 2005, formally in the business in 2005, but throughout that journey, Dave and I were just really good at the track, with Kevin and racing, you know, we'd be at Palmdale bombing on each other and all that kind of thing, but he just stayed supportive of me, and Mom Louise stayed supportive of us. When she met Crystal, it's almost like she had taken in another daughter, literally. So I feel attached to the McClellan family as family. It doesn't always have to be blood, people. You know, you can be family without blood. So I just thank you guys. And I also have to say that you've been an inspiration for us. Dave and Mom Louise were inspirations for me and Crystal because this racing stuff is tricky in a relationship. It really is. And the thing about it, what you have to do, you have to remember you can have racing with you, have racing in you, but racing has to be alongside you. It can't come between you. And that has never happened for us, and it certainly never happened for Dave. So thank you again for your time. I have to give one quick funny story though. I gotta put a funny story on this. Did your dad have like a Chevrolet tattoo somewhere on his body? No hidden bow tie anywhere? You certain? I'm a Ford guy, and we were doing late model Mustangs. That was my thing. And Dave would just give me the blues about dealing with a Ford. How can you deal with a Ford, KJ? I don't understand how you do that. Anyway, Dave, with all of that, whenever he had a Ford problem, he would call me. But anyway, he and his buddy Tim. Was that his name? Tim Morton. Out at their little clubhouse, they both had the garages in Sun Valley. And Tim had, I don't know if it was a customer or something, but he had to do something as a fuel injection. No, not those guys. But it was a fuel injected Ford. They needed a hand. I went out there, I got the thing straightened out and running. The only thing they did right with that whole project was lock the motor down in the engine mounts. That was all they had right. So I got it straightened out for him. And Dave the whole time, see Tim, I told you KJ was the guy for these Ford problems. Like, really, Mac? Okay. But they wanted to pay me. I said, you don't owe me nothing. Don't worry about that. we gotta pay. I said, listen, give the $100 or whatever to Miss Louise for the draw, the ladies of draw. Now, I don't know what the resolution of that was. I know they like to go to the Long Beach swap meet also. So, hopefully that $100 went to the draw program. If not, it might have bought a carburetor or something like that. Just saying. But listen, thank you guys for giving me this opportunity. Big Mac, we all know, is an amazing, amazing man. I love him very much, and I thank you for giving me this opportunity to talk about it.
So, KJ, aside from looking like twins, and it is hard to tell us apart, when you opened that letter and read it, I thought it was cool, and it didn't surprise me, because he did the exact same thing for me. I had quit my job as an elevator guy, went to work full-time at the Frank Hawley Drag Racing School because my dad wasn't rich or famous, and my mom never hit the lotto. And I thought, this is going to be my ticket, maybe to work my way up. And word came out that John Force was going to potentially be fielding another funny car. He already had Tony Pedregon in there, and Big Mac sent the letter. You don't have to sit up here, it's okay. They know we look exactly the same. Well, don't go anywhere. But a few years ago, I found the letter that Dave wrote to John Force in my behalf saying, I think this man would make a fine representative for your company. And again, I shouldn't be surprised. It's just the nature of what he did for other people. And much like you, I also didn't get the job. What the hell? Anyway, you wanted to say one more thing?
I wanted to thank you, Jack. Jack, you were my wife Crystal's instructor at Frank Hawley's out of Pomona. So I appreciate I appreciate your patience with her that I could never have to get down the driveway. So thank you very much.
Crystal, you're welcome. I love when students come and say, hey, I remember the time you yelled at me. I'm like, no, I didn't. I'm like, yeah, no, you yelled at me. I said, no, I didn't. They said, well, how would you remember? I said, because I never yelled at anybody. Unless the engine was running and you couldn't hear me and I had to do this and you didn't listen. I said, shut it off. Otherwise, I never yelled at anybody. But what would happen is, I'd see these same people over the years and tell me the same story. Remember when you yelled at that guy for doing a long burn? I'm like, no, I didn't. And the conclusion of every one of these stories was, well, you didn't yell at him, but you told him not to do that. I said, but for 10 years, you've been telling anybody that will listen, Beckman yelled at that guy when he went out there. But anyway, for your dad to have done that for KJ, it doesn't surprise me one bit. Our next speaker, where'd Steve go? Oh, Tuna. You know what? That was on my notes. And I was getting so damn cocky, I thought I had this. Tuna Tank video, then to Steve Gibbs. It's hard being dyslexic.
We all know about the TV shows, drag races, banquets, car shows, events, etc. But at heart, my dad was a hot rodder, a drag racer. He had quite the collection of cars come through the house when we were young, and of course we wish we had almost all of them back. All through the 60s, and while building a career and a family, the racing bug took a back seat. But before we headed west, my dad had the opportunity to acquire the 1948 Fiat Topolino that was debuted by Shreve Automotive at Indy in 1962. It had been sitting around a while, and when we brought it to California with us, we slowly but surely got it back on the track. It had a big block Chevy, clutch-light transmission, and it would run earth-turning 980s. We ran the car all over Irwindale, Orange County, Palmdale, whenever he could get a weekend off from announcing. He even was an innocent bystander to the Chop Down the Irwindale Christmas Tree campaign in 1975. One day at an NHRA staff meeting, Wally had made the comment that the NHRA was a good place to work. It wasn't a tuna factory, and from that, the legendary Tuna Tank was born. Bill Holland came up with a name, he had t-shirts made, the whole 9 yards. In the late 70s, Popular Hot Rodding offered to completely rebuild the car for a feature series called Project Econo Altered. Well, in the best laid plans department, that feature fizzled out, and that left the Fiat in pieces in the garage. It sat there for about 15 years. When he finally decided to get the tank running again, it got a new cage, new suspension, and other improvements done to it, and it returned to the track in 1993. After a few spooky times out due to some bump steer issues, Roger Lamb got it sorted out, and it's run straight down the track ever since. He picked up the biggest win in the Tuna Tank at the 1998 March meet. All the while, he wanted to get better and, yes, go faster, so he went through the Roy Hill School, got his Pro Stock license, and even tried to qualify for the Super Bowl of Pro Stock at Houston. After the experience with Roy's school, he wanted to go even quicker, so he got his alcohol dragster license at Frank Hawley's school with a best all-time run of 594 at 209. Not too bad for a TV news guy. We ran the Tuna Tank a few more years before it finally got to be too much physically, and we put it in the NHRA Museum. It was there for 13 years when my brother Kevin called me one day and said, "I'm going to get the Fiat out of the museum. I want to get it running so we can run it with his son Daniel driving and with Big Mac on the starting line watching with us." It took 3 years, but here it was on its first day out right here at Irwindale, running absolutely straight as a string. I think seeing it run again was one of the great joys of the last few years of my dad's life. We'll be running it again tomorrow to continue the legend of the Tuna Tank.
That's cool. Crystal,
Yes, sir.
you ever want to get yelled at, go to the Roy Hill drag racing school. That's a very different experience. Oh, it gets better from there. TJ and I are talking about having Big Mac give us a reference, and if you want somebody to open a door to get you in there, he'd be on my top 5 list of people. And the next speaker that's going to come up is on that exact same list, because when he talks, I just listen. I listen to every word he says. I appreciate everything he has to say, and more important, I appreciate the human he is and the things that he does for other people. Steve Gibbs.
Hey, nice guy.
I'd like to meet him.
Anyway, this will be fairly brief. But my relationship has been with Big Mac way back, as a lot of people. And I've been fortunate enough in my job to interchange and communicate, have dealings with some of the biggest names in the sport. But with the McClellan family, it was more than that. Their kids and my kids basically grew up together. I mean, you guys, how old were you, Kevin, when you came to California? 13. My kids are the same age. And it was a whole different relationship with Mac. And we had some good times together. There was the name of a guy that probably should have been in the Hall of Fame a long time ago, named Diamond Jim Annan. A lot of people in this room know Diamond Jim. Jim's widow, Betty, is in the room somewhere. Betty, would you stand up? This is Jim Annan's. But God, did we have some good times at Jim's house. I mean, it was away from drag racing, but the kids got together, they grew up, God only knows what they did when we weren't looking. But the time I spent with Big Mac was among the best times of my life. We made some trips together in Jim's motorhome. Awesome. I mean, just awesome. We took one trip one time to Beeline. It was an AHRA track at the time. Dave said, we'll take turns driving. He got as far, I think, as Indio, and he couldn't drive anymore at all for the entire trip. We wouldn't let him. Anyway, I don't have a lot of stories to tell. I just want to say that of all the humans that I encountered in this sport, on my short list, one of the most memorable men, one of the most talented guys, dedicated, great family man, was Big Mac. He was the best. I'm gonna miss him. I salute Louise, my heart goes out to you. Where's she? Lovely Louise. I mean, she was there all the time. Louise, if you added up the amount of money that has been generated through the quilts and blankets that she's made, that they draw auctions, I mean, you could sponsor a race car out of this thing. I just want to say one thing. I got a call this morning from John Force. He was going to try to be here, and he's going to try to be here tomorrow. And he's over there, his granddaughter's racing at Vegas, but he just did one thing. He says, I want to try to be there for Dave. And you know, with horses activity, God only knows how many people are pulling that in. But that's the respect that John had. So the McClellan family, my heart goes out to you for all these years, for the respect that the Gibbs family has for the McClellans. Goes on and on and on. But Big Mac, we'll miss you.
Are you kicking me off stage, Mike? I know you're next. I know. I got one more Big Mac story. How many years did your dad announce at the SEMA show? 45. It's your story. We'll go with 45. That's a more impressive. Seemed like 100. And he decided to hang it up. He said, I'm not doing it anymore. And he called me. He said, come meet me for lunch. Bringing the SEMA rep out. I want you to have that job. I didn't get that job either. Jesus Christ. KJ, what the hell, man? But I gotta tell you, when I think back, I really wasn't myself at that lunch, because the guy sitting next to me was God with a lowercase g, and he's saying, I think this guy could take over for me. Nobody could take over for your dad. They've got 3 people to do what he did now, and nobody will ever do it the same way, because there's only one Big Mac. Mike, you want to come up and say some stuff? Introduce the family.
Thank you, Jack. As he said, I'm Mike McClellan, Michael. Depending on how long you've known me, I joke around that only my mother or my wife, when she's mad at me, calls me Michael, which is all the time. Anyway, my brother Kevin, my sister Melissa are also going to come up here. We got a couple of things to say. I've already been pointed out that in a couple of my videos, I made a couple of little factual errors. I know how to get anywhere in the world, and I put Liberty, Missouri northwest of Kansas City instead of northeast. My dad went to Central Missouri State University, didn't go to Southwest Missouri State. But my dad had a credo, a motto. He lived by it. He beat it into us when we were young, and that was to never let the facts stand in the way of a good story. Anyway, thank you everybody for being here. It's heartwarming. I know it's heartwarming for my mother. She's doing okay. Okay, if anybody asks, come say hi to her before she goes back home to Shady Pines. Here, I know my brother wanted to say a couple things.
Hi, everybody. Can't thank everyone enough for being here. The Schultz family, it's an honor sharing the night with you folks. Thank you so much. It was great seeing all those photos and all the history behind your dad, and it was amazing. So a couple things. There's just 2 things I want everybody to understand. One, the Fiat, that car means more to him. That car was everything to him. And when we finally brought it back out of the museum, and my son Daniel got to drive it, the 3 of us were on the starting line last year, Michael and I and Daniel driving with my dad. He would not stop talking about it. It was like every time I saw him, he told me how good that car is and how amazing that is. But then he got to start with that car in '61 with the Shreve Automotive folks. And then myself and my dad built that car when I was 14 to get it running in '74. You saw the one picture that had no body on it. That was Bill Shrewsbury driving it for the very first time at Irwindale. The body wouldn't fit with the tires that we had on it, so we ran it with no body. Shrewsbury runs it down the car, sings it down there, going down the track. One of the stacks comes off the Hilburn injector, and he caught it. So Wild Bill is my hero, okay? Always has been, exactly. And I need to thank the family that I have here. My wife, Lisa, my son and his new wife, Shirley, but my son, Daniel. It's just a great night, and it's an honor to have all you folks here, and thank you very much.
You're a school teacher.
Yeah, exactly. First grade school teacher. Come on.
I just want to say thank you so much. All of the support, all of the messages, all of the things that were said about my dad when he passed was so unbelievable and overwhelming. it was incredible. So that was what stuck out the most to me, was just the outpouring of words and support was just amazing. So I mean, we all know how special our dad was, but to hear everything that people were saying was just incredible. So I just want to say thank you for all of that. So and then yeah, amazing. So thank you so much. Family also, my husband's here, Tony, and my two sons, Matthew and Ryan, and so he was, the one thing that he loved the most was his family, so thank you so much.
Thank you. Before we close out, my family's here too, my wife Lori, my son David and his wife Brittany, and my mother's great-granddaughter that Brittany is carrying with her, and my daughter Sarah, who's sitting next to my mom. I mentioned in the video that seeing the tank run was one of the great joys of my dad's life, but the greatest joy was his grandchildren and watching us. My dad would get up at events and talk about how he had a way of saying that he traveled all the time and owed everything to my mom, or else Kevin and I would have been in San Quentin and Melissa would have been working the street somewhere if it wasn't for my mom. And we, every time he did that, Kevin and I would tell him to knock it off. And he wouldn't do it. Well, knock it off. Anyway, thanks everybody for coming. We got one more little special show, and then well, I'll see you tomorrow. Thank you, Jack. You're okay.
So Mike had just mentioned Louise makes these quilts, donates them, they sell them, they raise money. And I believe the expression Mike used is if you sold them all, you could fund a fuel call for a year, right? Louise, I have a proposition for you, sweetheart. Get your ass to work making some quilts. We got to raise $3 million for next year. Kevin, start sewing. I've been to a lot of eulogies. And usually, without exception, when you listen to people come up and sing the praises of this person, rest their soul that has passed away, it's not the person I remember that they're talking about. It's like, that asshole wasn't that nice, but you guys are acting like it is. I guess that's what you do at eulogies. Nobody has to fake it for Bill Schultz. Nobody has to fake it for Dave McClellan. Two amazing people. Their families are here. They pass their genes on. We all remember them. They pass their memories on. You can't say enough superlatives about them. Tomorrow's going to be a fun, fun day. And tonight is fun, but for a different reason. It's because we're honoring some people that made a difference in our lives, made a difference in our sports. And we love them and we miss them. And thank you guys for letting me be a part of it. Everybody enjoy your night. And you can take your phones off silent, because Perdome might be going to call me later. He's going to put a car together for next year.
Nitro burnout. Next one is way cool. You get a chance to see it. That team came all the way down from Vancouver, Kansas, to be part of Nitro Revival. Bring that moving in the start machine. That is a rebuild. Here is the red race car, complete with its push vehicle. back.